Okay, so welcome everybody to the first virtual meetup. We've got about an hour with a panel of the folks you can see on camera. And we're going to be covering three topics: something about the cloud, something about learning, and something about developing the career. The way I think this is going to work is I will try to be the host and keep the chat moving, keep us to time, and make sure everybody gets included. And then the folks on camera are going to present the real content and have a conversation about those three topics. A bit of a discussion. We're hoping this isn't just us talking though, so if anybody in the audience wants to chuck a question in, could I ask you to either raise your hand through the reactions menu in Teams or drop something in the chat, and then I'll bring you into the discussion. I think that should probably help because we've got quite a few people on and it stops us all sort of talking over each other. Right, so I should introduce myself. My name is John Ogden. I work as a cloud architect in Centre of Excellence at Capgemini, and I've been doing that for about the last 20 years. The panel will introduce themselves as we get into the session. So let's kick off then. Question number one is all about what is a day in the life of a cloud architect or engineer. So maybe if I come to John D first, what's your view, John?
John, you're muted.
Sorry, back again. That was easier. Yeah, no, just a short introduction first. John Darcy, I'm an Irish guy originally, but I'm living in Denmark. I've been working with cloud now since 2013 as a cloud architect. I've had many roles in IT and many years. I won't bore you with it. But getting back to your question, John, a day in the life of a cloud architect. Well, the very first thing I do is get loads of coffee, loads and loads of coffee. After the first can, then maybe we can start looking at stuff. But basically, what it boils down to is first work of the day really is to sort of check all the automation scripts I have running and in the different areas and make sure everything's okay. Is there anything that's been cut on any of them? And at the customer I'm at the moment, I'm working as a freelance consultant. So I'm working at a very large global retailer, they were running a sort of a federated DevOps setup, so that the DevOps teams do a lot of the stuff themselves from the workload perspective. Whereas what I'm working with is the platform infrastructure, making sure the guardrails are in place, making sure security, compliance, all this sort of stuff is in place. So the day might be checking some of that, and we also have what we call advisories, where some of the DevOps teams, we can help them with architecture advisories or cost management advisories or different stuff like that, connectivity as well, if they need to get a data in on-premise or in other clouds and stuff like that. So there's some meetings with these that I have then as well to help them design it in a sort of a standardized way, so that we can go through it. And then maybe later on, I've got to write some of the scripts myself, and I do a lot of coding in CloudFormation, not so much Terraform lately, but platform scripts mostly in CloudFormation, which you run on through CDK on AWS. Yeah, and like towards the end of the day, then we've got our AWS China in there as well, which is a sort of a completely different kettle of fish altogether. Because they don't have the services there that we have everywhere else in AWS. So sometimes I use some time with them as well.
Okay, cool. Thanks, John. Jennifer, how does that differ for you?
Yeah, so I'm Jen Bergstrom. I actually am a multi-cloud engineer for Parsons, and basically am providing cloud architecture, modernization, migration efforts, and support for a variety of different products within my company. So what my day typically looks like is interacting with my customers, which right now are primarily internal, some of the different products that we offer across the company, and figuring out really what their requirements are, where the sticking points are, what parts of their systems need to be migrated, need to be modernized, then helping choose what cloud provider to use for their system. We actually operate in Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure right now, and we're looking at adding Oracle Cloud infrastructure to the mix for some of our specific needs. So, I have to help the teams assess what their specific needs are, what their cost model looks like, where they need to be able to be accessible from, and then use all of that information to decide, are we doing a single cloud deployment? If so, which cloud? Are we doing a multi-cloud deployment? If so, which services from each cloud are we using and why? We have a couple of our deployments right now that they have a huge demand for resiliency. They have to be zero downtime, and that's absolutely critical. And so we have them deployed across AWS and Azure, multiple region deployment in both in both cloud providers. So we have to architect that a specific way. And then, of course, part of that is being concerned with data sovereignty and data security and managing how we secure that, especially for those cross-cloud communications, to ensure that we have zero trust security in depth across the board for our systems. So I get to benefit in my job of dealing with a lot of different products, a lot of different systems and solutions, and multiple different clouds, which for me is really exciting. But it definitely broadens the amount of knowledge that I have to have across the board at all the different services and cost profiles that the different providers have.
Cool, thanks. Piotr, is this same for you? Or are you different?
So it's a little bit different. I'm Piotr Stremlau. I'm the guy with the anime avatar called Time Killer on Slack. And I work as a DevOps engineer at Talpa Network, which is a large Dutch media company. And I've been working in the cloud since 2021 when I joined Talpa Network, which is about a year right now. Year in 2 days, actually. So what my day looks like is I'm going to, let's say, differ a bit from the previous speakers. My day starts with looking at our DevOps Kanban board, looking at new tasks, creating new tasks, changing status, see what the team lead is assigned for me to do for the day. The next thing is we have a daily meeting. It's usually called a stand-up, a daily stand-up, where we talk what we did in the previous day, anything we need help with to fulfill our tasks, and what we're planning to do throughout the day. And after the meeting, I basically start working on said tasks. And examples of things that I can be working on is, for example, updating DNS records, which entails creating a merge request or a pull request, which changes our Route 53 records in GitLab. The changes get tested. If everything's green, someone reviews the change and approves it. It then gets merged into master and pushed into production with CI/CD. Other tasks would involve opening new AWS accounts for new projects, closing old AWS accounts for old projects, updating documentation, which is of course very important. Not a lot of people mention that. Sometimes fixing an issue where a CI/CD pipeline broke for a project. And the things that I work with daily, I pretty much live in Visual Studio Code, which is a IDE. It's my love, my life, everything I do in VS Code, including the notes that I'm actually reading from right now. Work with Linux, because everything in the cloud runs on Linux. I code a lot in Python and scripting in Bash. Use GitLab for CI/CD, work with containers, and of course, tons of infrastructure as code, mainly with AWS CDK, serverless framework, and a bit of CloudFormation. No Terraform. Yeah, I think I'll say enough for now, because I could go on for a very long time.
Oh, cool. This is really interesting to me, because this is so different from what I do day to day. Samir, how about you? How does your life differ from You know.
Sorry, I was just trying to get myself off mute. Hey, John, thank you. But then I would actually like to defer this question to one of the other panel members, and I'll explain why once we get to the other two questions.
Okay, cool. All right, in that case, let me talk about my day then. So although I'm part of the Cloud Centre of Excellence working as an architect, for most of the last 4 months, I've been on sales duty. So that means we get a number of requests for tender, requests for proposal, and stuff like that from different clients. And I have to describe how we would do the stuff they've asked for. So like, how would you migrate all of our workloads into the cloud? How would you build new stuff in the cloud? So I produced the technical method statement that says we would look at what you've got on your existing estate like this. We would do designs like this. We would use these tools to do the migration. We'd test it like this. We'd put it live using these kinds of release techniques and then hand the working service back to you after this many days. Okay. So I think we've got a couple more minutes left on the clock for this one. For the folks in the audience, what's your view? Are the things we've talked about the kind of things you expected us to be doing? Are you doing significantly different things? Or would you like us to move on? Okay, I'm going to suggest then we move on because that keeps us on track. So the second question is all about how we plan learning journeys. So it's a sort of stuff, how do we decide what topics to learn, what certs are good, what order should we do certs in, and how do we decide which ones to do? So Samir, maybe if I come to you first, what's your thoughts on planning a learning journey?
Sure. So to the people who usually reach out to me with this question, I usually recommend starting off with either solutions architect associate or sysops admin. I personally do not think very highly about the developer associate certificate since it is kind of more focused on the dev tools that are cloud provider focused. So Lambdas and DynamoDB and then Kinesis, etc. So my usual advice is to either just complete the solutions architect associate or sysops admin associate or both, and then proceed to the professional certification. And after that, maybe pick up Terraform and getting a cert. And this might be different to what Peter mentioned here. So I have seen a lot of companies using Terraform. It's open source, easy to use, and it's a good skill set to have. And along the way, I think it is good to pick up a programming language, the usual suspects being JavaScript, Python, Java, or Go. I mean, at least learn at least one of them. And along with that, the thing that will bring the most value would be working on personal projects, which will help you gain experience. So start with any simple use case. So for an example, say develop an image processing web application and then try to deploy it into a 3-tier architecture inside a VPC. And then as a version 2, make it completely serverless. And then Terraform the entire setup, put it on your GitHub repo, add it to your resume, talk about it in your interviews. So that is my usual recommendation to folks, how to go about the cloud journey.
Okay, cool. So Peter, you were mentioned there. Is that the same journey you would go
on? So for I did. I'm not sure I'm a very good example for proper study planning because for my certification studies, I was all over the place. I went into Windows Server certification, then I went into Linux, and then at the end, I started studying for AWS. But I would strongly encourage everyone who is interested into getting into the cloud and into specifically the AWS cloud to start with the Solutions Architect Associate. It is the best thing to start with. I have asked many DevOps engineers and cloud engineers in the past when I was looking into planning my study path, and every single time they told me, and this was for the past couple of years, every time they told me just start with AWS and just start with Solutions Architect Associate, because that is the best thing to start with. And since I'm a little bit scatterbrained and roughshod with the way I've been studying, I think I'd like to maybe speak a little bit about the things that I found to be effective when I was studying for various certifications. And one thing that people don't mention very often is when you are going to study, because a lot of people talk about what they're going to study or how they're going to study, but not when. And sometimes you can be lucky enough to have your workplace allow you an hour or two to study. Usually they'd prefer you to study something not cloud, because we're assuming here that you want to get into the cloud. You currently have a profession which doesn't involve the cloud, and let's say when you do, when can you study? And a lot of the time you'll have to do this on your own time, and a lot of people have families, social lives, and other things that they want to do than just study on their free time. So what I would say as a good piece of advice is take a good honest look at your weekly daily life and see where you can allocate some peaceful study time. For my approach, I used to stay up until 2 a.m. and woke up really tired in the morning and just went to work. That was my daily routine. And,
bad move.
and to have more time and motivation to study, I decided at some point in 2018 to go to sleep early and wake up early. And my work usually starts at 9 a.m. and I make sure to always wake up every weekday at 6:20. And with this in mind, if you're working from home, great. You have 2 hours of study time right there. Nobody will interrupt you. If you're commuting to work, you can study on the train or bus or whatever with your laptop, phone, or tablet. If you're traveling by car, then just go to the office early. Go to a meeting room, isolate yourself until your actual work starts, and just go ham on your studies. It's I think a very valuable thing to just allocate yourself some time where you don't have anyone anywhere to bother you. Go into a coffee shop if you have to, and just make it a routine to go into the coffee shop and just study. And you don't have to study very much. Make it maybe 1 hour per day, even 30 minutes per day. The most important thing is just to be very diligent with your studies and just do this regularly. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, cool. I think that's some good advice. And I'm sure when we get onto learning tips, John will want to mention a certain GitHub page. But before
Possibly.
we Jen, what's your view on the learning front?
Yeah, so one of the things that folks who know me know about me is that I have an avid curiosity. So I'm constantly looking at new things to learn and new things to dive into. That said, discipline in your studies, as Piotr was talking about, absolutely essential. You have to establish a good habit. You have to get into a good routine and find one that works for you. I'm a morning person. I get up at 5 every morning and spend about an hour and a half, 2 hours every day studying, reading, doing whatever I'm doing. Right now I'm getting more knowledgeable on Google Cloud, so that's my primary focus. But it varies week to week, month to month, what I'm studying. As far as the path, I agree with everybody else that AWS is a great cloud to start with if you're just getting into cloud. It's kind of the granddaddy of the clouds. It's got the biggest market share. It's got the heaviest adoption across industry. So it's a good one to start with. And I also would agree with the idea of starting with the Solutions Architect Associate as your first cert. It has a good breadth of knowledge across all of the different services that are offered across AWS and the foundational knowledge you need for what it really is to be working in the cloud, what that even means. Because depending on where you go, who you talk to, what that is means different things to different people, but AWS has kind of been, excuse me, the one driving what that really is in the real world and what it looks like. So yeah, that was my first cert. That's the first cert I recommend anybody else gets. And then depending on what role you want, you know, the additional certifications you get beyond that is really going to be tailored to the role that you want. In my particular role, where I'm doing multi-cloud assessments and where I'm looking at the cost of things and the security side of things, that meant getting the security specialty in AWS and getting the cloud practitioner certification in AWS, which I know people trivialize, but it has a much broader focus on the cost analysis and on the tools that you can use to estimate those costs and to calculate total cost of operations within the cloud environment if you're migrating a system. And, you know, so it actually had really valuable knowledge that you had to dive into in order to pass it that made sense for me. It wouldn't make sense for a lot of folks, but it does in my role. Once you have one cloud under your belt, if you're interested in moving into a multi-cloud environment like I am, and let's face it, I believe that 63% of companies in the last statistic that I saw that are in the cloud are expecting to be multi-cloud within the next few years if they aren't already there. You're probably going to have to touch other clouds at some point in your career. So learning tools like Terraform if you want to be a hands-on, you know, implementer, or learning other cloud environments and picking up some basic certifications in the other cloud environments. That's a good path to take if you want to be able to do multi-cloud architecture work. It really does depend on what type of work you want to do, what certifications you should go after. So when I'm talking with people and advising them, that's one of the things I always try to dig at is, what are you interested in doing? What type of work do you want to do? And then we can develop a learning path that makes sense for your particular interests.
Yeah, I think we see questions on Slack all the time. You know, I've done architect associate, should I immediately do professional? Should I go for the other associate? Should I do security? But so how would you plan that kind of learning journey? You just sit down and talk about interests?
Is that for me again?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, what I always encourage my team here to do is get out and play a little bit and experiment. So, you know, get hands-on with the cloud, play around with what you're, you know, with what you can in your own environment, and figure out the things that you found fun and satisfying to do versus the things that maybe you got through but you didn't want to do them again, because we all have those things. You know, and then as much as you can, you know, cloud computing and cloud architect, those roles are huge as far as the diversity of what you can do. You kind of heard that in our responses to the first question. Every one of us is doing something different and distinct, but we're all in the cloud architect, cloud engineering side of things. So look for an organization or look for an opportunity that lets you try those different roles and lets you play around with them a little bit and see what you really catch your interest in. You know, if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I was going to be a multi-cloud architect, I would have said, no, that's not my interest space. But then as I started doing it, it's actually really satisfying and really fun. So it's something that I grew into over time. You know, people will do the same thing as they're going through their careers. So, you know, I guess building the learning plan, you can start with a basic learning plan for what you think you want to do, but you should always be open to adapting and adjusting that learning plan as you actually get in there and get those hands-on experiences and learn more about what you really want to do. That's kind of a squishy answer, but it's kind of a squishy question, honestly.
Sure. So John, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like as Peter says as well, that I came a bit awkward into the whole certification setup as well. I had the 3 associates way back many years ago and just let them drain out. So I had to take them again, and that's when I found Adrian's course. And then I just took the associate architect one first, obviously, because as you say as well, it's the broadest. But then I actually did the professional afterwards, because I noticed as well that you know, a lot of the people, I was doing a lot of interviews in one of the companies I had as well, that you know, getting people in, and there was a very, very big difference between associate holders and professional holders when you're talking to them at the interview. It's a much different discussion. So I went on the professional course afterwards, and then sort of picked up the developer and the sysops afterwards as well. As well as the security. Like I write that quite a lot in Slack as well. That Adrian's course for the professional is very, very close to the full thing for security. So I just did some extra reading on specifically grants and KMS in general, and tried to set a few things up myself as well. And that helped quite a lot, even though it was a difficult exam. Like I think all the specialties are professional grade, so to speak. So they are difficult. I was hoping to get the advanced networking one, and networking isn't my strong point at all. So I think I'll take a few months, maybe a year at that one before I try it out. But going through his course at the moment. And another thing as well is, I come from a very, very technical background, but that was so long ago. But I've started learning Python again, or I did some months ago as well, which makes it a lot easier to get my Lambda functions in place and everything else. It works really, really well. So and of course then as well, I put this Control Tips site that John was talking about together, basically because I just didn't want to type the whole thing in again every time. and Adrian Slack is sort of it's a free Slack premium, so they all disappear after, was it 5 gigabytes or something of data? Then all the old messages disappear. So that was one of the reasons why I started it. But then John and Bart and some others gave some good input, and Neil as well, as to pull in a pull request on there and put some more information in there. And the FAQ actually has grown quite a bit in there. So I've had to divide that up here over the weekend so that there's some sort of structure to it. But I think it's just something I usually just throw it in there if I can see it. So I think actually I found a discussion that Adrian was going back and forth with somebody, so just more or less copy the whole thing and put it into the FAQ because it was so good.
So 177 IP addresses in a 24.
Yeah, that one comes up. That's right. I need to put that in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other one is the S3 buckets, account A and account B. That's always a difficult one as well. I must update that one now. Yeah, I forgot all about that. But yeah, I know the learning paths are important, and I think as well that it does depend on. I think John, it was you that mentioned that. You really have to know where you're going before people can help you in getting there. So one of those things is really important as well, sort of, and even just as a high level, if you're going the engineering path or the architect path or the developer path or whatever it is, then it'll shape it probably a little bit easier than to get the ones themselves. But it's good to get the certifications. But again, as Mr. Cantrell always says, that's not the end game. It's the knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's important too.
Yeah, always knowledge and experience, I think, is the mantra. Neil, first of all, apologies for not being a good host and missing you out on the first one. What's your view if you're still speaking to me?
Oh, it's fine. There are loads of people here, so it's easy to miss. So I'll do a quick introduction. So I have been employed as a programmer or related disciplines for over 25 years now, and I've been working on the cloud for about 6. I work with our CI and CD pipelines within Alert Logic. So all of my customers are internal, and we are almost 100% AWS. So unlike Jen, we don't have the multi-cloud. So we go and get data from our customers who are in different clouds. So there is one team who deal with multi-cloud issues, and we try and give them some advice sometimes, but normally they know better than we do. Back to certification and learning. As you said, you need to know where you're going. So if people come and ask, what should I do to do cloud? And go, there's like hundreds of different options. What are you interested in? So yeah, having a destination in mind is the most important. but then you, as Jen has said, you can change that over a couple of years. It's easy, and there's an awful lot of different ways you can learn about different things. The AWS documentation, there's an awful lot of it. If you can find some real gems in there. Some of it is a bit too fluffy and aimed at the more corporate people who are deciding where to pay the money. But there are some real good examples. There's a collection of workshops sites that they have, which will teach you a great deal of depth about a whole load of the different services that they offer. They're wonderful. They don't promote them enough. I was having a chat with a technical account manager, and he mentioned one of these. I'm like, oh wait, there's more. There's loads. Oh yeah. So yeah, it was really interesting seeing that.
Have you got a link to those workshops? I've seen them. They're really good.
Yeah,
they're on the Control Tips side.
Yeah, I think yes, John B took my link and said here.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of my journey, I started using AWS on a daily basis before I started looking at any certification. And our company are part of the APN, so getting people in employees who are certified is a bonus for us. So it was mentioned in various different places, and I went, oh, okay then. I think I started with the SysOps associate just because that was what I was doing on a daily basis. Then I went to the developer associate, and then finally the solutions architect associate. I don't recommend that. It was that I think Adrian's recommendations about doing SysOps, solutions architect first, is a great idea. You get a huge amount of understanding of the sorts of services that AWS offer and how they can be used, which one you should use in which use case, which is a great idea. So far too often I see someone, oh, I know how Lambda works. I'm going to use Lambda for everything. You really shouldn't use Lambda for some things. It doesn't work. The example with the Cuddletron that Adrian does, they're doing the longer term delays. That sort of thing is not necessarily what Lambda is very good at. And then also the one that is hurting in my team at the moment, we have inherited some code that uses a lot of DynamoDB, but written in normalized fashion, and it's just it's so slow. You click on the link and you go, wait. Oh yes, there's some data there. And I'm going, oh. So I've been researching a lot of how to do single table design for DynamoDB, and that is my next project when I get some free time. Is redesign these apps and try to work out how to evolve the data behind the apps. As I said, it's all internal, so no one's shouting about it. But if I can make it a little bit more performance, then everyone's going to be, whoa, what's going on?
So that sounds super interesting to write up as a case study. That we could all learn something from how you've done that. But let's pause there, because I think we have our first audience question from Sheriff.
John, not really a question, but 4 things I wanted to very quickly touch upon based on the discussion you guys are discussing today. So one, about the study. So one of the things that I've noticed and that has really helped me in my career is, and Adrian always stresses on that, fundamentals. And I'm not just going to talk about the very basic fundamentals, but also fully understanding the cloud fundamentals. I've only done AWS certifications. Like Jen, I've had to work on all three clouds. If you understand the cloud fundamentals, you have no idea how easily it will be to pick up. If you've done your AWS SA, you can very easily pick up GCP or Azure core services. So don't pigeonhole yourself into just one cloud provider. Projects, which Samir spoke about, two ideas I have. So one of them is very popular. It's the Cloud Resume Challenge. I'm pretty sure a lot of you must have heard about it. But the good thing about this is sometimes not everyone knows what kind of project they should do. This one gives you kind of a structure and an easy way to work through it. Another one that I've just started to work on is, and again, Jen touched on that, Oracle Cloud. So Oracle Cloud offers a very, very generous, always free tier, where you get a huge amount of ARM instances, up to 4 CPUs and 24 GB, plus some x86 64-bit compute. So what I've started to work on is to actually create a full Kubernetes cluster based on that compute. Kubernetes is not one of my strong or my fortes, and it's something that I've been looking to learn. So given that amount of compute that's available for free, it's just the perfect environment to try and do that. And last thing, and again, Jen touched upon that. I work in an organization that has a very strong focus on cost optimization. That field is exploding. I encourage everyone to read about FinOps, the FinOps Foundation, and to potentially look into the FinOps certifications as well.
All right, cool.
That's it.
Some really good builds there. Thank you. Would you mind posting a link to the AWS Resume Challenge? That could be useful for others.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually, it's not just restricted to AWS. You can do the challenge on any of the 3 providers.
Cool. So I'll move us on to the next one in a moment. I think all I would add to the learning debate is there's a really nice, if a little bit twee, course called Learning How to Learn on Coursera. It's done by a couple of neuroscientists, and they provide a whole pack of advice and tips and techniques for learning stuff quickly, learning it effectively, dealing with procrastination and all that type of stuff. It's completely free. It only takes a couple of hours to watch, but there's some really good stuff there that's helped me learn stuff over quite a long period.
And I'd just like to add there, John, as well, even though Time Killer was talking about Peter was talking about the, early in the morning. What I do sometimes as well is that I revise some of the videos when I'm out running or out walking. Just put it on the Teachable iOS app and just listen to them talking and go through it again. And then, it gives us sort of a bit of a background as well, and sort of bangs home the ideas and the knowledge in there as well.
So I think we've got a further question on, having completed Architect Associate, what jobs do you think I should be aiming for? So what do the panel think? Can we recommend specific jobs, or can we recommend a process to identify
something that interests you?
Yeah, it's always a good idea.
There are numerous things you can do with the SysOps or Solutions Architect Associate. Find something that interests you, and then dig in further.
Yeah, maybe even an architect role, or maybe even a junior architect role, or whatever. Just get in and get your hands dirty with somebody who maybe has been doing it for some years or whatever, and progress from there.
So I'd maybe start with Demi. Are you already in a job, or are you looking to enter professional IT? Because if you're already in a job, I would go and talk to people that do roles that look interesting for you. So go and talk to an engineer. Okay, so you're in third line support. Great. Go and talk to some people. Go and talk to an architect. Go and talk to a project manager, an engineer, a cloud support person, a DevOpsy person, a coder, a tester. Learn about what they do day to day, and then find the one that seems more interesting and find out what they've learned, what they do. Go and talk to a hiring manager in those teams and try and talk yourself onto the team. Whereas if you're just starting, you kind of have to do the reverse of that. You have to, in my view, jump on LinkedIn, start connecting with people that talk about interesting things. Connect with people you see on Tech Study Slack. And again, try and talk to people in different roles and get those people's perspectives on what those roles involve. Find the ones that you find more interesting and try and break into those positions. Peter, what do you think? And you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I wanted to give a little bit of an anecdote to answer Demi's question. In my case, I at some point in my career was just a IT support person, just like you, and my dream was to be a system administrator. And at some point, I achieved that dream, and I thought I would always be a system administrator. And I was basically making fun of people who thought they were that we should migrate to the cloud. I thought that was a big joke. I thought we should. Who's gonna like? I mean, cloud is just other people's computers, right? And what I did is, at some point, somebody told me about DevOps, and I became interested in it. And I actually reached out to the DevOps engineers that were working in my company. I asked them, what are you working on? What tools are you using? What should I, if I want to get into DevOps, what should I start learning? Of course, they told me, learn AWS first, or Azure, or GCP, whatever you want. And through me asking them, I actually, for a very brief period, became a member of the DevOps team. Not officially, though. I'm not going to get into that because that'll be a long story. But essentially, I could have started my DevOps career 3 years earlier than I did in my company, just moving to a DevOps role. All it took is being interested, being curious, asking some people around, asking what's required, and then interact with them. I actually got some. I was still a sysadmin, but I got some very interesting projects to do. They told me, hey, deploy this on AWS using Terraform. And they really didn't care about it. They were busy with their own stuff. So I had as much time as I wanted to work it out all on my own, and I did. And yeah, so that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, cool. Jen, I think your hand went up as well.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of foot stomp the concept that somebody's already, or that several folks have already said, which is don't underestimate the power and the value of networking and reaching out to people and just asking questions. You know, fundamentally, people tend to like to talk about themselves. And so if you're interested in what it looks like they're doing, ask. More often than not, you'll get an answer, and it can help you shape your interests and help you figure out what you want to do. The other thing that I've seen people do that I thought was pretty smart and that seemed to be pretty valuable was going on LinkedIn and looking at some of the requisitions and the job openings that are out there. And don't necessarily just look at the title. Maybe look at the title as a starting place. If you think you're interested in DevOps, find a couple of DevOps recs that are out there. But then read all the other things, the skills that they're looking at people having to do those roles, because that can give you a pretty good idea of what the expectations are outside of just the tech. The reality is, at least in my role, the tech is probably 15-20% of what I do day to day. it's the people interactions, it's the understanding what the systems need, it's the, you know, sussing out the requirements and really helping identify all the stuff around the tech that is 85% of the job that I do. And oftentimes that's the harder part of the job, is, you know, all of the softer pieces of it and really figuring out what is needed to meet the needs of the system and the services that you're trying to provide. You know, so do your research, get curious, reach out and ask people, talk to people, and, you know, don't be afraid to take a tangent either. If you see an opportunity in a company you think you want to work for that looks like they have job opportunities that you want to do, get a job there. And then you can build your network inside that company and, you know, step into a DevOps role from an IT support role, or, you know, work those networks, work those connections.
Okay, I think there's a follow-up question there from Demi, asking about what other certs or technical skills make me more qualified.
Yeah, but it
brings us really cleanly onto the third topic today, which was how to get into the cloud. So the takeaway still works, and we're still where we're supposed to be on the agenda, which is important to me. But for me, that question, I think I would take it back to what we've already said. Rather than us telling you what might be appropriate for that role, I would go and talk to the people who are recruiting for those roles. So go and talk to the people at your existing company, ask them what skills they want, and normally, I think the barrier for entry into most roles is actually quite low, because the hiring manager usually wants people who've got a great attitude, who want to be in the team, who wants to learn, wants to grow and do what the team needs. Fantastic, we can bring those people in, we can teach as we go. It's a lot harder to bring someone who's got all the certs in the world but might not have quite as good an attitude for fitting in with the team, learning stuff and cracking on. So for me, don't go and get a load of certs, then apply for jobs. That's absolutely wrong advice. Go and talk to people first, listen to what skills they think you should get, go and get those skills, then go back and talk to them and try and get into the team. Samir, what's your view?
Totally. I mean, I'm with all of you here. So speaking to people is the best bet. I mean, speaking to the people in your company who are doing the same job, or like you said, John, speaking to the recruiters, that's when you'll get the idea of what is the actual required skill in a role that you've already seen working in the organization. And then Jen also had a great point about reviewing the requisitions that are out there on LinkedIn. I used to do that myself, and a lot of times don't get bogged down by all of the gazillion technologies or tools that they want a person to do. But then most of the time they should be able to get somebody on board, even if they know, say, 50 to 70% of what's on there. So don't get bogged down by that, and then reach out to the people who are already in that company and then ask for a referral, and referrals go a long way. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, the number of times I've seen a job advert that lists every single technology and skill and product known to man, you know, that's nobody has those skills. So don't ever feel bad about applying and saying we'll learn along the way. John, what do you think?
Yeah, no, but I think like the learning by doing is probably the most important thing as well. Like get some projects under your belts, even if it's just some of those demo lessons that Adrian has out there, or if it's something else that you do yourself. You know, get the experience, especially when you're going for a DevOps role. And like getting back to that, maybe the DevOps associate would be okay after the solution architect associate. And I know that the professional DevOps certificate is really difficult as well, but gets a lot of stuff there. But that's probably afterwards, once you are in a job, getting that. But definitely resonate what everybody has said. Talk to people, understand what's to be done. Like I don't know. I've got a lot of space on LinkedIn, and there's recruiters calling all the time, and I've started to use it as a sort of try to get information out of them rather than trying to get information out of me. So you can see what they're actually looking for, because I have 2 or 3 calls a day, and that's it's interesting to see that when it is DevOps, it's Kubernetes is very much up at the moment. Knowing a lot about Linux, knowing a lot about Docker, and getting that type of thing under your belt early on, and getting some experience with it as well. And as Puerto was saying, the actual process of development process as well. Use GitLab, use pull requests, do it properly, right? Get your reviews done. In the old days is probably not extreme programming where you had 2 people looking at the same code and all this sort of stuff. It's good to use a lot of this, to do your test first, and do a lot of people call behavior-driven development and stuff like that. It gates, and that brings it back again then to the soft skills you were talking about, that to have them as well. So it's really a combination of the hardcore tech skills and then the soft skills you can use to be able to understand and talk to the customer and convert business requirements into sort of hardcore technical specifications to get the stuff done properly.
I think that's really, really important. So we've got about 4 minutes left, so I'll just take a quick step back. Are there any more questions or burning points that people would like to raise?
Hey, I'll just pipe up really quickly and reiterate, don't think that you have to have every skill that's listed on a requisition ever. No. People that write requisitions are really, really bad about listing out the laundry bag, the grab bag of everything that they would love somebody to be able to do in that role. But the reality is, I have never yet seen a hiring manager who actually expects to find any candidate that has all of those skill sets. So, when you're looking at those requisitions, when you're considering applying for a job, pick one where you have a couple of the skills that you're pretty strong at and focus on those skills. Tailor your resume for those skills, be ready to talk about those and have examples on things that you can do with those skill sets, and then be willing to learn and, express that willingness as you're interviewing with the hiring manager. That's going to do more to get you into an opportunity than a grab bag of capabilities where you're very surface level knowledge on all of them, or trying to claim that you know things that you don't yet. So don't let it stop you from applying. Know what your strengths are and be honest about those, and that'll get you in a lot of doors.
I think that's a really powerful point as well. You will get asked questions in an interview that you don't know the answer to. Every single interview ever will find something that you don't know, and there's 2 types of people. One type of people will lie or try and give a evasive answer that claims they know, but that's super obvious to the interviewer every single time, and it's a very bad sign for the candidate. Saying I don't know, but here's how I would find out, and giving a sensible research plan is that answer. That's exactly what the interviewer, in my experience, wants to hear. They want to know that you're honest enough to say that you don't know, and that you know how to go and find stuff out.
Agree.
There isn't a way that you can know all of the features of a single cloud, let alone multi-cloud. So the number of releases that AWS make, it's more than one person full-time just going in and examining all of those and working out what they actually do. So you need to be able to learn new stuff. And if you can show that and talk through the process you would do to do that research in front of a hiring manager, that will get you much further than trying to bluff your way. And I mean, the job I'm in now, I said a couple of times, oh, I don't know. When I asked, how would you do this sort of thing? I said, well, I don't know. This is what I've done in the past, and I could look at evolving that, but it might not scale to the level you're talking about. So I would look at other options. So it's fine.
Yep. Cool. So I think we are about out of time. So thank you for everyone who's joined, thank you for the panel for sharing your experience. I'll put the video recording of this up on YouTube. I've dropped the link to their YouTube channel in the chat. And if anyone would like to send any feedback, whatever you would like to say about help us improve this would be very much appreciated. So via email, via the Slack channel, or comment on the YouTube, whatever. That would be awesome. Assuming this goes down well, we will try and do another one in a couple of weeks' time with a different time zone, so we get a slightly different mix of folks, and then hopefully turn this into a regular occurrence.
Sounds good. Thanks for all your help, John. It was quite good.
Thanks for organizing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, it was awesome.
Cool. Cheers all.
Cheers all. Have a good day. Take care.
Good one.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.